feel like I'm sunk into this chair?
Because you fall back when you get in these chairs.
And then when I try to get out of this chair, I get static cling all over all my clothes from sliding across whatever it is they're made out of.
That doesn't happen to me. You must have an electric personality.
It's my electric personality. That's what it is. That's what it is.
Yes, yes, she's on fire.
Yes. Well, speaking of being on fire, look at what we've got. We've got 10 brand new stencil designs in the Dorothy series because they are spots and dots. Dottie Dorothy. Punch buggy.
Yeah.
So I designed these for layering with larger stencils or stencils and masks with larger openings. So these could be small patterns layered into the large areas of large patterns.
Large patterns.
Large patterns, small patterns, layering. And so this is what I created when we were messing around with the dotty dots. It is 2 sets of dots layered with a mask with a large opening. The nerve of him.
Some people just have no common sense.
Don't you know we're filming here?
Right?
Keep it down. All right, so that's what I did. The layers and the dots and the Dorothys, and super excited about the variety of, you could go on and on forever with dots.
What I like about these is that she had a plan, and I have to admire anyone who has a plan because it works for me. But in addition to the layering and the idea that these were designed for that, when you look at these, and if you think these are just a stencil, well, then it opens all of the possibilities. If you don't get stuck on the fact that they're meant for layering and they're perfect for layering, you can actually use them. This is one that I created. You can actually use them as you would any other stencil. Now, some of these are bigger dots, some of them are smaller dots. In some cases, there are a little bit more wide openings between them, and in some cases, for things like this, you'll never need another piece of punchinella. You've got them really dense designs like this. So there's a bajillion ways to use these, and we're going to explore a tiny fraction of that bajillion today.
Or you'll never need any more screen for your back door.
You are so weird.
I know. All right then, let's go make a mess with the dots.
Let's go.
So the super cool fun thing about the Dorothy collection is that it is a bunch of dots on dots on dots, different patterns, sizes, and disbursement and shapes of dots. So they are wonderful layered with each other. So I wanted to show you first a couple of papers that I created with the gel plate with multiple dotty stencils on top of each other and over one another. So this one's got sort of opaque green, translucent Payne's gray, and a little bit of cadmium red. And they're all layering over one another to create this wonderful speckly pattern. This one, I have left some white dots on the paper, and it's a couple of different dot patterns plus a stencil. This one, I love the layers of this because it's the big dots with the small dots. So I've got some kind of greenish teal in the background, Payne's gray, big dots, and light pink, little opaque dots that go right over the dark gray. So the dots are meant to not only be layered with other stencil patterns, but also to be layered with themselves. Here's another one of a beautiful double, triple dot pattern in a sea of blue. And then this one was a ghost print, was the dot pattern that was left behind, trapped underneath my big wave stencil from the Georgia O'Keeffe collection. So you can see the dots are only formed underneath the ghost print of the big wave. And then we get into some of the ways I combine dots with other stencils. Here's another Georgia O'Keeffe stencil with the dot pattern kind of over it. Then we can get even more complex. This is my wildflower stencil with 2 or 3 different dot patterns. I love this one. Look at the color combo in that. And the layering of the dots with the wildflower stencil makes for some great combined patterns. This one is the Klimt Looking Glass stencil, and it's combined with 2 or 3 different dot stencils. Here again is the big wave Georgia O'Keeffe pattern with double dots underneath it. And again, the Klimt Looking Glass with dots in orange over a teal green. This is the ghost print in white. And speaking of ghost prints, here's the last one. This is again the Big Wave Georgia O'Keeffe collection, the ghost print with the dot pattern. So you can have lots and lots of fun with dots. So I wanted to show you real quick the patterns that I made. First of all, this one is super exciting. This is basically punchinella in a 9x12 sheet. Look at that. No more dealing with the strips of punchinella. No more lining them up across the plate and getting the seam where they line up that goes right through your print. Here's a full flood 9x12 of a punchinella pattern. We all love that punchinella polka dot, and now you can have it in a full 9x12. Then I've got some other dots. I don't know the names of all of these off the top of my head. You're gonna have to go to the website and look at the Dorothy collection. This one is small ones sort of in random lines. This one is medium ones in very uniform lines. This one is random sizes and random disbursement. I like that one a lot. This one is also random, but in a different way. Here's another little bit more uniform one, but irregular shapes. The big dot pattern that goes excellent paired with the smaller dot patterns. Here's another irregular random dot pattern. This one's got some big shapes, and this one's got some random small. So you can see that the small ones, the big ones, the irregular ones, the regular ones, they're all gonna overlap with each other really nicely, the Dorothy series. Okay, so I'm going to show you how to create a unique print, and I'm gonna use these last two dot patterns and my wildflowers stencil. Okay, so I'm working on my favorite pad of sketch rice paper. I'm going to use the smooth side that is facing up in the pad when you open it. I'm gonna grab one sheet for cleanup in case I need it. I always use a sheet of rice paper for cleanup because sometimes the most beautiful things happen on the cleanup sheets and you want them to be on the good quality paper rather than a scrap paper. So more often than not, I've accidentally made some beautiful papers that I could never recreate. So I'm going to use a 2-inch brayer for the first layer. And for the first layer, I want to create sort of a mottled yellowy orange. So I'm using a 2-inch brayer. I'm using Amsterdam acrylic Naples yellow. I'm gonna put that out in a few places. This is a nice creamy pale yellow. And I'm gonna use the 2-inch brayer to sort of bounce and disperse that around partially. Then I'm gonna take Azo orange and add that. And my hope is that I can just get a little bit of a mottled yellow orange base layer. So let's blend that in with the 2-inch brayer. And we'll get that all sort of evenly dispersed, but hopefully we'll get that two-tone. And I'm gonna take my rice paper and put that down and make a solid base layer for this print. So I'm working on my 9x11 gel plate and the 9x12 stencils and 9x12 paper. So this is really nice. This is what I wanted, a little light mottled orange. And I'm gonna use my cleanup sheet to grab the paint that's still left on the plate. Apply a little bit more pressure and oftentimes the paint will come up. So I'm just gonna clean up that way, and here again I've got a cleanup sheet that has a lot of potential. So again, here's our nice mottled Azo orange and Naples yellow base layer. Okay, the next thing I'm going to do is to use this dot pattern and Pyrrole red light to apply dots to the base layer, large dots to the base layer. So we're gonna put a little bit of this out. And now I'm gonna use my 6-inch sprayer to cover the plate evenly and quickly with the Pyrol red light. I'm gonna put the random dot stencil into the red, and then I'm gonna take that base sheet and put the first layer of dots. Now you wanna use the sides of your hands, the heels of the palms of your hands, your fingertips to make sure you get a really good impression with all these dots. Some of the small dots, you need to definitely make sure that they get a little extra pressure because they're a little more fine detail. So you're gonna pull this up and have a look at it, and if you see that you're missing any dots or that there's a lot of paint in the openings left on the plate, you just need to apply more pressure before you take it off. Don't dismount the paper before you make sure you've got a good pattern. You want a full, complete dot pattern, and you're gonna lift it up and look. And again, when you apply more pressure, you're gonna get all the dots to print. So you wanna make sure you don't have any paint in the openings left on the plate. Okay, I think that's pretty good. There we go, beautiful. Random sizes, random disbursement. So now we've got a ghost print under here, and I'm gonna come back with that cleanup sheet and just take that paint off so we can go to the next layer. And even the ghost print of the dot pattern is a lot of fun. So this is our cleanup sheet, and we're getting the ghost print of that first dot pattern. So the next step is to take a clean plate. Let's flip this over so we make sure we don't have any red on it. We've got a clean plate, and we're gonna take this small random dot stencil and we're gonna put it on the clean plate, okay? There's no paint. We're putting this on the clean plate. Then we're gonna grab my second 6-inch sprayer that I'm using for cool colors so I don't get any red mixed in with this. I don't have to worry about cleaning this completely because I've got a cool color brayer. And I'm going to put over the top of that the turquoise on top of the stencil, okay? So there's no paint underneath. We're gonna go on top of the stencil. This is a little messy, but I think that it's worth it. So now we're gonna roll the paint through the dot holes, and that's gonna put a positive image of the dots onto the plate. And the best way to clean your stencil when you get it this messy is to either, one of two things, put it in a dish basin of soapy water off to the side of your workspace, or press it onto a clean sheet of paper to try and press off as much paint as possible. If you don't want to get it wet because you want to keep moving and keep working, you can press a lot of the paint off. But if you put it in the dish basin, that's how you're going to get most of the paint off. But you have to get it in there while it's still wet. Okay, so we've rolled the paint over the whole top of this stencil, and then we have put the dot pattern on the plate. So now I'm going to take my cleanup sheet and just press it onto this, sort of off the camera. I'm just gonna press the cleanup sheet on top of the stencil to pick up any paint on there that's still wet. So I'm just doing this to sort of pull any paint off of there. And again, I've got another layer on my cleanup sheet. Okay, so now we've got these great dots on the surface of the plate. So the next step then is to wait for these to dry a little bit, and we're gonna pull them as a ghost print. So I'm gonna go over that color with manganese blue. So this is a highly translucent blue that I'm gonna use to lift these dots. And I wanna make sure that my teal dots are dry before I put the blue over it, and I think we're pretty good. And I'm gonna just make sure I don't have any teal in the brayer because I don't want it to tint my manganese blue. So I'm just gonna roll this out on that cleanup sheet. So I'm rolling the brayer on the cleanup sheet. So that cleanup sheet's got all kinds of good stuff happening on it. Okay, so here comes the manganese blue. the idea behind this is to get a nice thin, even layer of paint. So I'm going to go both directions, and you want to use a light touch with your brayer. You want to come in light, and lift light, come in light and lift light. That's how you eliminate all those lines of the brayer and get nice even layer. So lift, lift, lift at the end, and don't press too hard. Okay. So then we're going to take that and we're going to put this wildflower stencil into the dot pattern that we transferred right onto the plate and the manganese blue that we put over the whole plate. Now we're applying that, and we're bringing back our fun dotty orange sheet and press. So we're going to be incorporating a second dot pattern, overlapping with the first, and then applying a stencil or a mask with large openings. So I designed these Dorothy stencils to be layered with each other and also to be layered with my stencil and mask patterns. So they're actually adding a small dot pattern to the large open areas. Okay, so the moment of truth. Let's pull this up and look at that beautiful double dot pattern print. Isn't that gorgeous? That combination of orange and teal and blue and the double dot pattern and the wildflower stencil. And now I'm transferring that cleanup sheet on here to pick up the ghost print. And we've got a beautiful second print of the wildflowers mask and the double dot patterns. We made two beautiful sheets of paper with the Dorothy Series dots, layer, layer, layer with each other, and with stencils and masks with large opening patterns.
Elizabeth has shown you how you can take these new Dorothy designs and layer them with themselves, or you can layer them with stencils or masks that have larger openings. I want to show you how we can use them as a regular old stencil, one where you might just come in and want to add a layer. They are perfect for the way that she designed them for layering with others, but they are also really, really useful when you just want to add some pattern and design. So here are some examples. And what I really like about this release is that we have varying scales as well as density. So here's a design, and you can see I've used the stencil exactly as is, but the dots are placed really far apart. Here we've got ones that are creating a pattern because they kind of curve and move up and down. Here we've got a tiny dot that is really, really dense. This one is a little harder to see, but you can see the reflection. I put something sparkly in there. I don't remember what it was, but again, varying size dots that are not super close together. And then this example, and I don't remember the name, but here's one with really big dots that are placed kind of close together, so you get a little bit of a different density look. What I'm going to do today is I'm going to spray, which is not something you ordinarily see me do. So here's a number 8 tag, and I'm going to bring in this design, and I know that neither Elizabeth or I, these are new enough to us that neither of us are really remembering the names right now, but obviously that'll be up on the website. It'll be posted so that you can see it. I've got a couple of dilution sprays. I've got Funky Fuchsia and Island Parrot. Now, yeah, pink and green has a tendency to make mud, but if you spray them near each other but not overlapping a lot, you can see that you're going to get these really cool oval dots. So how simple is that to just go ahead and create a pattern in the way that you would create any other pattern? And yes, of course, you can use an ink blending tool and paint and put color through the stencil that way. So the other thing that I wanted to talk about, and I'm going to come back to that one and I sprayed just a moment ago, but the other thing I want to talk about is what I think of as the spray and flip method. So when you look at these designs, you can see that the dot of this is a color and the background is another color. And this is what happens when you spray through a stencil, you flip it over, you press to print, and then you spray through it again. And as you start playing with these, I find that I just keep going until I'm done. I mean, really, you can create all of these really wonderful patterns that are dual color, and sometimes you get a lot of the background that prints, sometimes you get less. So here's how to do that. Here is another tag. So what I'm gonna do is grab, here's the stencil with all of that juicy goodness on the back. So I'm just gonna come along and I'm gonna print it. Now the gist of this design is you have to press on the stencil so that the liquid that's on the other side comes in contact with your surface. I'm not gonna move it at this point. What I'm going to do instead is pick, so this is a darker color. Let me just come in and I can put some of this through, and then let's grab, for the heck of it, let's bring in an oxide spray. And that's the beauty of this. You can pretty much do whatever you want. So now I've got the background here, and again, it's never perfect, but that's okay. And I've got these blue and purple ovals that are there. Let's just go ahead and wipe this up quickly. Now I've got color here, so I'm gonna do the same thing. This time I'm going to bring in, this is a 5x7 index card. I'm gonna go ahead and press. Now I am picking up some of the color that's on here. I'm only gonna do this a couple of times. I'm not gonna just keep going back and forth, but you absolutely can. That's really the fun part of this. Let me grab another oxide spray. And we'll just use one color this time because I'm not gonna go any further. So I've got some good coverage there, and when I pick this up, how cool is that? I've got color in the background, I've got those pink dots. Backgrounds don't have to be anything more than a jumping off point, and when you start to add layers is when they get really interesting. Let me throw this to one side. So what I want to show you next, this is the rice paper that you see Elizabeth use very often. If I hold this up so that it reflects, you can see that this is metallic paint. The color of this was done with an ink spray, and this is the same technique, but here I used multiple colors of ink sprays, again with a metallic paint. I'm going to show you that next in just 1 second. For this technique to work, you have to use paint along with whatever the sprays are. And in my case, I'm using a color of Art Alchemy paint, and I've got Dilutions ink sprays. You could probably use oxides, but I don't think you'd get the exact results because of that pigment component. But you absolutely could use Tim's Distress spray stains. So I have my plate, a stencil, the Art Alchemy Sparks paint, and a brayer. And what I'm going to do is just go ahead and get a layer of paint on here so that you can see how this works. So my goal is to put enough paint on here, and we're in Sedona, so it's really, really dry. I'm gonna put enough paint on here so that I can not only pull a print, I'm gonna pull what's left after I get through, and that'll make more sense when I do it. Now, the one thing I will say too, as an aside, though I don't have a piece right here, is that Elizabeth and I are using the regular rice paper as for a roll-off sheet because we've discovered that you can do really cool things with those sheets. All right, so there is that. I'm going to work with this, well, I'm going to work with the smooth side of the paper. And I'm going to press, and I want to be certain that I really press because that's what's going to force the paint through those little holes so it prints for me. Just takes a moment to do it. I'm not going to be super careful because I have one that's already dry and ready to go, because that's the thing. The paint has to be dry so that it's not re-wettable when you come back and add the sprays. All right, so that's not perfect, but it's close enough for our purposes here. Now I'm going to take the stencil off. If I had time, I would mist this with water and I would take another piece of rice paper and print what's on here, but we don't want to mess around and do that. So now what I'm going to do is go ahead and print what's left here. The theory behind this is the ink sprays are going to go wherever the paint is not. Now that might be a thin area of paint that some of the sprays will come through. It might be the openings in the stencil that you can see here are white. Now, I obviously didn't clean everything out, so when it comes time to do that to this design, I'm gonna get varying results here. But as I said, I've got one ready. So this stencil is named Dorothy Drama, and I've done exactly what you just saw me do with that other one. So I'm going to start, well, let's start with the one that is the positive. I need to wet this because that's what's going to allow the ink sprays, whether it's the Dilutions or Distress spray stains, that's what's going to allow them to move and creep. Again, pink or purple and green, not always a great combination, but I'm not going to overlap these a lot, so I'm not going to get mud. If I think that I want these colors to bleed a little bit more, all I have to do is come back and put some more water on this. So now obviously this is going to look a little bit different when it's dry, but when I turn this over, you can see that I've got all this wonderful color. Now, I normally wouldn't pick this up like this, but because I've got color doing all kinds of wonky things, and I'm okay with that. I don't mind that. So let's wipe this up, and then I will do the same thing to the one that is the negative of the design. Doesn't have to be perfect because I'm going to use these same colors again, but interestingly enough, again, I'm working from the back of the sheet. You will see that this starts to pick up the color or any moisture that's on the table when I put it down. So this time I think I'm just going to do the pink and the purple. Just come in and spritz. And you immediately see this stuff start to wick around. If I think I need to, I can add a little bit more water, just because it lets things bleed and move around. So now, obviously, you have a whole different look. Now the background is the paint, and the openings are whatever color I put on top. For some reason, that didn't bleed through real well, but that's all it takes to fix it. So this technique allows you to take advantage of that design, in this case Dorothy Drama, as a regular old stencil. The obvious thing is that you have the bonus of being able to do all of those layering techniques that Elizabeth showed you.
And action. That guy's in our driveway.
Really?
Wow. Go.
So not impressed. So 10 stencils. Use them for layering, a la Elizabeth. Use them as you would any other stencil, with sprays, with paint. Apply stuff through them with an ink blending tool, something that I didn't get into today. Use them with mediums and gels and stencil butters and lunar paste, all of that stuff.
Lunar paste. Wow.
Right?
And stencil butter.
Yes.
It sounds like we're going to eat them.
I don't have a problem with that. I've never met something I didn't want to have for lunch.
This is true. That is how I often describe things that I really like, that I just want to eat it.
Yep. You're going to love these. You're going to want to eat the whole 10 of them.
Yeah, you're going to want to eat all 10 of them. Just don't eat them all at once.
No.
Pace yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
All right. Thanks.
Bye. Have fun.